What's going on, guys? Welcome to Perry's Pit, the first ever episode of Perry's Pit. It's going to be a little wrestling show that I'm going to do just by myself. I figured what better way to kick things off than with the 2020 Backlash review, WWE's most recent pay-per-view. It was this past Sunday, June 14th. Let's get right into it. With the kickoff show, it started with Christian and Ric Flair discussing the greatest wrestling match ever, which main evented Backlash between Edge and Randy Orton. Christian, of course, on his best friend Edge's side, Ric Flair on Orton's side. They discussed that, and that led us into our one and only match of the kickoff show, that being the U.S. title match between Andrade and Apollo Crews. Now, this match wasn't too bad. Apollo Crews did say he was going to be a fighting champion, so it's no surprise to see him in action for this pay-per-view. The rematch clause is enacted as Apollo Crews was the one to take the belt off of Andrade. I'm waiting for the moment that Angel Garza turns on Andrade. Now, at ringside for Andrade was Zelina Vega, as usual, and his best friend, Angel Garza. Now, earlier in the week, I believe it was on SmackDown. There was a triple threat match between Kevin Owens, Andrade, and Angel Garza, and Angel Garza was pinned by Andrade for the win, and that was a number one contenders match, I guess you could say, figuratively, for Apollo Crews' U.S. title. Kevin Owens wound up coming to ringside and joining on commentary, which played in later. The match wasn't bad. I wound up giving it a 3-star rating. It was nothing super special. Apollo Crews hit the standing moonsaults, his signature, and had it won, it seemed, but then Garza at ringside distracted the ref until Owens got up from commentary, hit him with the Owens stunner, which then distracted Andrade. Apollo Crews was able to hit a powerbomb and win to retain his title. It wasn't anything special. It was a good match. Apollo Crews did retain. But yeah, I think the main focus there is what happens between Garza and Andrade moving forward. I don't know if we'll see these two face off again, Andrade and Crews, at least not for a bit. I don't think that's the real rivalry there. I think there's something hidden between Andrade and Garza, but we'll have to see. And then rounding out the kickoff show, it was just Sheamus speaking towards Jeff Hardy again, more junky talk. He said at one point, I'll bro kick you back into obscurity, which, isn't a bad thing to say coming from Sheamus. But I don't know, this whole feud that they have going on based on Jeff Hardy's real life issues with alcohol and drugs, I don't know. You look at kayfabe and it's kind of walking the line of crossing it. That didn't make sense. It's walking, you're about to cross the line there. It's coming close. I would hope they asked Hardy first, if he was okay with this, because, that's some really personal stuff. So, but they're playing it off well. We're coming off SmackDown where Sheamus made Jeff Hardy take a piss test on the show. He wound up throwing it back in Sheamus's face, which, it was basically a cover of what McMahon and Shawn Michaels did, Vince McMahon, like back a couple of years ago, at least like 10 years ago, I think. And it's basically a knockoff of that. But we'll move to the main show. We'll get to that match eventually. But the main show started with a women's tag team triple threat match for the women's tag team titles. It was Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross versus Sasha Banks and Bayley, and versus the Iconics. Now, I don't really like Bayley's heel gimmick, personally. It's not my favorite. I think she's a much better face. I find her kind of annoying as a heel, which I know kind of goes with being a heel. But I don't know. I just think she's much more exciting and fun when she's a face. But that's besides the point. Before the match, they were asked, Sasha Banks and Bayley were asked that if they lose the tag belts, does this affect their friendship? Both denied it, saying that no, it wouldn't affect their friendship. I think it would. I think the moment they lose their tag belts is when Sasha turns on Bayley. Um, Bayley's kind of got this whole cocky thing going on because she's Bayley 2 belts or whatever she wants to call herself. And, that's perfectly fine. I think that's good for a heel. But I do think Sasha will turn on Bayley eventually. That remains to be seen. The match was good. I gave it 3 stars as well. Alexa Bliss was fantastic. Nikki Cross was a bit of a liability out there. She didn't gain much momentum. I think for when it comes to that tag team, Bliss is definitely the leader of the group. The Iconics were simply filler, I'd say. But besides a few good moments, what was it? Peyton Royce hit a cross body through the ropes onto everybody at ringside. That was probably their top, most exciting moment of the match. Sasha Banks and Bayley, you got what you expected out of them. They did well. The match was paced well, had some decent spots. It ended with Alexis Bliss hitting Twisted Bliss on, I believe it was Peyton Royce of the Iconics, but Sasha came in and rolled up Alexa Bliss, and that's how they retained the titles, Sasha and Bayley. Kind of a boring ending, you could say, I guess. But it fits their heelish gimmick, getting that sneaky win just to hold on and retain. I don't know how much longer they will hold on to the belts, honestly. There are plenty of good tag teams out there, even more than what we saw in that match. So, that remains to be seen. But right now, Sasha Banks and Bayley are still the champs. And that's that. Moving on, we saw Braun Strowman got his car fixed. Not really relevant to the plot. After Miz and Morrison went at it with baseball bats and golf clubs and all that earlier in the week. That was just a little filler segment moving us to Jeff Hardy versus Sheamus, which I mentioned earlier. The whole drugs and alcohol segment still, the feud storyline, whatever you want to call it, that's still going on. Sheamus blamed Hardy on a DUI, but it was Sheamus in the car that crashed in the parking lot of the Performance Center or what have you, which then led us to this match. First thing I noticed, Sheamus has different entrance music. I know this has been for a while, but I do miss all the entrance music, the whole shame for fame, that one. I like how he's back to his old attire and everything, though. I know none of this is a super recent change, but the way he looked with the bar, I think it's worth mentioning. That was gross. That was no fun. But I did like him with Cesaro. This is Jeff. Jeff has only had a couple matches since returning. He was out for a year. Ring rust wasn't really evident. He seemed to keep it together pretty well. Sheamus did have control most of the match, though. Besides a few spots, Hardy hit a twist of fate and a swanton bomb at one point, but Sheamus got the rope break with his foot at 2.5. Definitely pushing Sheamus here. You could kind of tell, being an enforcer and definitely showing off his power. Sheamus wound up hitting a brogue kick outside the ring and then threw Hardy back inside. Brogue kicked him again and got the victory. So definitely showed off his dominance. I don't think this feud is over at all. I don't think it's going to be over until Hardy wins, personally, just because, the drugs and alcohol problems that Hardy has have had real life consequences, and everyone knows how hard it's been for him to overcome that. So I think that until he actually does overcome it by beating Sheamus, I don't think it's going to be over. We'll have to see, though, because it certainly doesn't seem that way. After that, we had the Raw Women's Tag Title match between Nia Jax, and Asuka. I gave this one 2 stars. It was nothing too exciting. I see what they did. Nia Jax definitely got a chance to show off her strength, which is always a big factor in her matches. I did realize Asuka uses AJ Lee's Black Widow, which I didn't realize until watching that match. I found that pretty interesting. At one point, Asuka locked Nia Jax in an armbar outside the ring. which, it's a standard match. A submission outside the ring is not going to do anything. I see the whole like power, like, getting the arm weaker, I guess, but I don't know. That's just not something that I thought was the right spot for them. This match didn't go too long. Asuka wound up winning by double countout. Nia Jax couldn't get Asuka back in the ring in time. That way it doesn't make either one look weaker. I could see why they did that, because you still want Nia Jax to look strong, but you still want Asuka to look strong as a champion. So that happened. Unfortunately, it's not the most exciting ending. But then after the match, after the ref announced that Asuka won, Asuka off the apron hit Nia Jax with a hip attack, which was a fun spot. But I don't really see Asuka as a heel. So and that's kind of a heel move. So we'll see if that develops any further. I'm not sure if I'd consider this like a true rivalry, like Jeff Hardy and Sheamus are in right now. But nonetheless, Asuka retains. Next, we had the Universal Championship between Braun Strowman and then Miz and Morrison, handicap match. I don't like the idea of handicap title matches just because, you can kind of tell that the short-handed guy is going to win, especially someone as big and strong looking as Braun Strowman. They got to hype him up quite a bit. I don't think any title has been changed in a handicap match. I'd have to do more research on that, but I don't think so personally. But it does create, it can create tension between Miz and Morrison on because whoever pinned Strowman would become the champion. So, and that did play in throughout. It was over before it started, though. Like I said, you kind of knew Strowman was going to win. Miz and Morrison show their new music video titled "Hey Hey Hey Ho Ho" at the beginning. It was, I don't know, they're fun. I like them as a tag team. I think they do some of their best work together, especially Morrison, because we've seen Miz have a pretty successful solo career. But them together is pretty entertaining. And Strowman's just big and slow, and Miz and Morrison stole the show throughout the match. There was at one point where they hit a skull-crushing finale / stomp, whatever you want to call it, whatever you call their tag team move. And it looks like it had it won, but Miz pulled John Morrison off from gaining the pinfall on Strowman. Miz then hesitated, realized what he had done, threw Morrison back on, but it was too late. They got the 2 count. Strowman got just enough time to, I guess, heel back up and kick out. But it looked like it would have been over if not for Miz doing that. And then after that, not much happened. Strowman got his comeback, got his second wind, wound up hitting the running power slam to retain the title. It didn't seem like much developed out of the Morrison getting pulled off by the Miz. We'll see in future episodes if that does come into effect. I mean, that's the reason they didn't win. So that'll be interesting to see the development there. New Intercontinental Champion AJ Styles got interviewed. He said he's having a championship celebration on Friday on SmackDown. Everyone's invited, including Daniel Bryan, who he beat. But he referred to Daniel Bryan as not phenomenal. So could this lead to a Daniel Bryan-AJ Styles feud? Perhaps. I do think it'd be an exciting one, especially after their tournament final match, which was the match of the night for SmackDown. And those are 2 great technical wrestlers. So I'd love to see them in a feud. We'll see where that goes in future episodes. And then they moved on to the WWE title match between Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre. 2 guys that are made out to be strong, very strong, powerful men. And it showed throughout the course of the match. Lashley, I kind of questioned how Lashley quickly went from the whole Lana Rusev thing, and we know Rusev's been laid off since WWE took care of that about a month ago, laying off quite a few notable superstars. But how does he go from that kind of feud to a title match? I don't know. Maybe I missed something, but I don't know how deserving Lashley was of this title shot. He came out with MVP. Lana was in the back. MVP, I think, is a good mouthpiece for Lashley. Much better than someone like Lana, if she were to presume that role. But I liked MVP at ringside. Lashley went right at Drew right before the match. I think Drew fought like a quarter of the match with his jacket still on because Lashley went right at him before the bell even rang, putting him in a full Nelson, which is another, weakening, submission, but I don't think a submission that, like, it's like when Asuka was in the armbar outside the ring. Like, I don't think that's, submissions are only work in certain situations, but power was shown throughout. Drew kicked out of a spinebuster and a flatliner at one, which he's been known to do. He kicks out of one with like almost everything, which I guess I don't know why they'd have him do that, because like even better superstars don't do stuff like that. I don't know. It's beyond me. I think it's fine, I guess, just to make Drew look more powerful and how it doesn't phase him. But I don't see what gives Drew that right to deserve something like that. We saw the ankle lock and the Kimura lock in this match. Ankle lock from Lashley, Kimura from McIntyre. Both didn't do much, but, weakened the opposing superstar. Drew kicked out of a spear, which is one of Lashley's finishing moves. And then Lana came out, wound up distracting Lashley, and Drew hit the Claymore kick once Lashley turned right back around and retained the title. Lashley didn't help Lana up after she was on the ground after the match. Him and MVP just dipped. Lana is at fault for distracting Lashley, so, tensions are rising between them. I would like to see Lashley drop Lana. I think Lana's pretty useless out there, in all honesty. I honestly wish Rusev was back, I don't see why I didn't like that storyline to begin with. I just think that was silly. But Drew retains, and that led us to the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders. It wasn't even, we didn't even get to the Raw tag title match. It was this cinematic of them messing around like outside, bowling balls and jumping into trash and ninjas, and it was it was clearly for comedic purposes. But when you're promised a title match, I'm personally disappointed that we didn't get that. But both groups are entertaining. It was some good comedic relief, but I wanted a tag title match and I didn't get it, so I'm personally disappointed in that. Overall, yeah, disappointed. But then that led us to the main event, the greatest wrestling match ever, which that tagline got a lot of hate leading up to this match, just because I think it's just because we didn't know what we were expecting. Like, we obviously know that the greatest wrestling match ever doesn't exist, and that's just simply one's opinion, because everyone looks for something different in wrestling matches. So Orton versus Edge, it was honestly a tribute to good wrestling. And, we saw a lot of hip tosses. We saw a lot of, arm drags, cross bodies, a lot of good technical wrestling, cross faces, headlocks, some old school stuff. But there was also a lot of exciting spots too, and a lot of tributes to good wrestling and good moves. They just tore the house down. Randy Orton and Edge always have been fantastic performers. And this, in I think 9.5 years, Michael Cole said, this was Edge's first true one-on-one match. At WrestleMania, he had the match against Orton, but it was a last man standing. This was his first normal match, you could say, in 9.5 years, and he looked good. The whole, part of the whole story, Orton targeting the neck, which, makes sense. He missed 9.5 years. I don't know what just happened to my computer, but he missed 9.5 years. So that makes sense. You're going to want to target the surgically repaired neck. Edge targeted Orton's shoulder, which he separated years and years ago in a match against Edge. So, and he's always had some kind of issue with his shoulder. So, they were both playing to each other's weaknesses, you could say. Some headbutts off the top rope from Edge to Orton made Orton bleed right around the eye. So, blood's always nice, and it is rare nowadays to see that, especially in this PG era. We don't get to see that often, so I think that was a little spot to cover that era of wrestling. And several pages were taken out of several books, which I think was some of the most exciting spots. We saw Randy Orton do his dad, Cowboy Bob Orton, superplex off the top rope on Edge. We saw an not an ankle lock, a Olympic slam, which was Kurt Angle's thing back in the day. We saw that. We saw a kill switch from Edge. We saw rock bottom from Edge. All these were kicked out of too, which makes it even more impressive. Randy Orton took a page out of Triple H's book and hit the pedigree. Orton did a diving crossbody, little Ricky the Dragon Steamboat action there. We saw plenty of impressive spots and, legendary moves from each man. The ending, however, we had all those great spots and tons of great moments throughout the match. They definitely tore the house down. It was the match of the night by far. I wound up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars, highest on the card. The ending, however, Randy Orton goes a little bit low. Referee Charles Robinson doesn't call it or anything. The announcers questioned the no call it is. But either way, it wound up working in Orton's benefit. Orton then hit the punt kick and finished the match that way. It was interesting seeing him finish with a punt kick. He did hit an RKO earlier in the match. Edge hit a spear as well. Those are definitely worth mentioning as they're the finishing moves. But, it was interesting seeing him finish with the punt kick. I would have to think this match maybe finished shorter than it was supposed to because after the match we found out that Edge has torn triceps in his arms. He underwent surgery almost right after, within 24 hours after the match. And he's said to be at home recovering. So best wishes to him. Hopefully he's back soon. I don't think it's the end of the feud, if I'm being honest. It might be a couple months, of course, before Edge comes back. So we'll see what happens with Randy Orton without Edge, because that's the feud he was in. But overall, it wasn't a bad pay-per-view. Definitely had its moments, Orton and Edge being the highest point of the pay-per-view. Overall, I'd give the pay-per-view maybe 3.5 out of 5 stars. Not the best we'll see, not the worst. But yeah, that was 2020 Backlash. Let me know what you think down below. And yeah, I'll be coming out with wrestling content as much as I can. I like doing top 10 stuff like that. Might have the guys join me for a few debates on here. But it's been Perry's Pit, and I will see you guys later.